fellas, we can be that mistake. Let's do this.
What's up, y'all?
What's going on, guys?
We're Embrace the Sec 21.
Yes, we are.
I'm Spencer.
And I'm Daniel.
Today, we are doing some learning because it's German week, and we got this little thing called the Autobahn system.
Yes.
And I think of Autobahn, I think of a series of indoor go-kart tracks that are around the Mid-Atlantic.
Yes.
I don't think of the German highway system. Now, what were you saying about this guy beforehand?
This guy, Simon Whistler, he has a plethora of successful projects and side projects all over the place.
He's all over.
Yeah.
He's been on the channel before when we discussed the Queen's powers.
Yep, the Queen's
and
powers.
And the foods that are banned in Europe.
Yep.
Yeah, so it should be a good source of info.
Yes.
And let's dive in.
Let's do it, man.
In a world constrained by speed limits and excessive nannying, there is something wonderfully liberating about the German Autobahn system. It's also one of the few times you can utter the following sentence, well, at least Adolf Hitler got this one right. The reality is actually that the Uber dictator really just jumped on a successful bandwagon and then claimed the glory for himself, which sounds very much like him. The German Autobahn, which translates very literally as car runway, forms the basis of the first modern national expressway system and today stretches for over 13,183 kilometers, making it the third longest system in the world behind the US and China. When you consider the size of Germany compared to other nations, that's really quite extraordinary. Then there is the frankly giddy prospect of travelling as fast as you like, because yes, long stretches of the German Autobahn come without any speed limits, making it one of the few places in the world where you can push your foot down on the accelerator without any fear of flashing lights behind you. And I've driven on the Autobahn a few times. It's pretty exciting and also slightly terrifying, and I don't have a car that goes particularly fast.
Yeah, I could imagine that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could go fast in your truck. Like,
No.
it's power. Is it power? No?
No, I can... Look, so my truck is not built for speed.
No.
It's built to never stop moving.
Yeah, it's built to haul shit.
Yeah. So, I'm not matching speed with a
Ferrari or a BMW.
No, I'm the guy that tows their cars away from the accident.
Yeah, and as someone that does like fast cars, like it going fast, link to my Motorsports and Gaming channel right there, I do enjoy that. I've never been able to afford anything that goes that fast, but I'd love to one day.
Man. I feel like a slow car on the Autobahn is just as terrifying as a fast car on the Autobahn.
Yeah.
Because how do you... Oh, man.
And also, like, with the amount of traveling that I've done just this past year alone, and just as doing music and going up and down the East Coast, like, I've noticed in more recent years, people who own these big pickup trucks, the new ones, the ones that are not meant for work, just they don't use them for work. They use them as race cars on the highway.
Yeah.
So
Those are terrifying.
that is terrifying.
I'm terrified by the semis that are hauling ass, too.
Oh yeah.
Because those are like big sailboats.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, that's like terminal velocity. It's like 80 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, once you do something, like, if you do an evasive maneuver with that thing, you're flipping.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter.
I was like a few car lengths behind two tractor-trailer trucks that, were speeding through Jacksonville, Florida. We were going like 90. Yeah, we're going 90 miles an hour. They were going like faster than us. And we pulled over just to let them. And it was like swerving. I'm like, it was like, oh.
Yeah.
I wish I had like a drive cam during that time.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Yep.
Whew.
Considering we are essentially just talking about roads today, the German Autobahn system is pretty iconic around the world, but to start this story, we need to begin a little further south, in the lands of pizza, pasta, and excessive hand gestures. It's Italy, by the way, in case you didn't know. Italy. While the Autobahn can be considered the grandfather, or grandmother for that matter, of modern high-speed highway systems, there was a road that predates it. And since we do like to give credit where it's due, it's only fair we begin with that. The Milano-Laghi motorway opened in 1924 and was the brainchild of civil engineer and entrepreneur Piero Puricelli. The road essentially connected Milan with the lake regions of the north, allowing the well-to-do to escape the hustle and bustle of the city quickly and efficiently. This was at a time when there were only roughly 41,000 cars in Italy, with most of the population still using carts, bicycles, or just their own 2 feet. So this was very much a rich person superhighway. While the first Autobahn didn't appear until 1932, the seeds had been sown well before. The disastrous terms of the Treaty of Versailles had crippled Germany after World War I, and while many believed they fully deserved it, if anybody had a crystal ball at the time, I'm willing to bet things would have been rather different. With the country experiencing high unemployment and struggling to kickstart its industries once again, the construction of the Autobahn system was seen as a way of stimulating growth and prosperity in the country. Germany had already dabbled with the Avis experimental highway in Berlin, which opened in 1921. The Avis is a bizarre racetrack Autobahn hybrid, which is technically the oldest controlled access highway anywhere in the world. I don't think it'll be ruffling any German feathers when I say that it's not exactly the most interesting.
Oh, wow, that is not an interesting course at all. It's like the original Daytona Beach course before they built Daytona International Speedway. It was like down the highway, a very sharp turn onto the beach, and then turn back to the beach, back on the highway. That's what that reminds me of.
That's a very tight turn.
Yeah, you gotta get on the brakes early and time it right. Yeah.
Holy crap. All right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Racetrack in the world with just 2 very long straights and 4 turns. And yeah, that's it. The beauty of Avis is that it's also very much a part of the Autobahn system, forming the northern part of Bundesautobahn 115. Over time, the closure of the road for racing became more problematic, and the last race was held in 1998. The first purpose-built Autobahn to be used exclusively by everyday men, women, and hopefully not children was the Autobahn 555, which still connects Cologne and Bonn and was built between 1929 and 1932. However, when it opened in 1932, it was still considered a country road and wasn't given official Autobahn status until 1958. The stretch of road has been nicknamed the Diplomat and Rennbahn, the Diplomat racetrack, thanks to the high numbers of diplomats who were said to enjoy the occasional high-speed outing from Bonn back when it was capital of East Germany.
Nice. Here we go.
When Hitler seized power in 1933, the idea of a large-scale Autobahn system was already well in the works, and seeing the potential benefit it would bring, Hitler jumped on it. A man called Fritz Todt was brought in as Inspector General of German road construction, and the system was seen as the ideal way of bringing down Germany's uncomfortably high unemployment rate. It was noted by visiting Americans at the time that Germany was about to begin building a huge road network, but it seemed to be lacking some rather important machines, namely cars. And it was true. Certainly compared to parts of the US, Germany didn't exactly have a vast fleet of automobiles on its roads. But luckily, Herr Hitler had another plan. He intended to provide the people with cheap and cheerful cars that would be for everybody. The people's car, the Volkswagen. In 1938, Dr. Ferdinand Porsche completed his design for the new car, and a production plant was set up in Wolfsburg. Over 300,000 Germans paid at least part, if not all, of the cost in advance, and no doubt many were rubbing their hands together with glee over the prospect of a shiny new car and a wonderful, expansive Autobahn to drive it on. Alas, that was not to be. Hitler ordered the Wolfsburg plant to switch to military vehicles on the eve of war, and not one German received a new car or even a refund.
Oh, shit.
Oh, that's gotta hurt. Promised a car, and then like, nope, we're gonna build war machines. We're going to war. F the Jews.
Yeah, that's basically what he said.
Yep.
Good God.
Whew.
On a grand scale of Hitler's offenses, this doesn't really even come in the top 10, but I mean, what a fraudulent prick. Workers from around Germany were brought to various camps along the new road projects and put to work building the Autobahn system. Now, it's important to mention that this was certainly not always voluntary, and many were forced to work under the compulsory Reich labor service. It's therefore probably not a great surprise to hear that work continued at a slow pace right up until the outbreak of World War II. During one of his many barely barely comprehensible screaming speeches, Hitler made the grand announcement that the Autobahn project would employ around 600,000 people with 1,000 kilometers worth of roads added each year. Like many of Hitler's blusters, this fell well short, and it's thought that at its peak, the project was employing around 120,000 people, and by 1942, when things started to go south for Germany and Adolf Hitler, only around 3,800 kilometers out of a planned 20,000 kilometers of freeways had been completed.
Wow.
The propaganda image of healthy, Aryan worker people working joyfully on the Autobahn system for the greater good of the German homelands was, well, utter crap. With able-bodied workers required on either the front lines or in factories, pumping ammunition and military hardware out, the workforce building the Autobahn system was almost exclusively forced workers and concentration camp inmates. With new roads appearing around Germany, you might have assumed that during World War II, the German military would be barreling around them. But the truth was the early Autobahn system wasn't particularly useful to the Wehrmacht. Trains were still far more efficient when it came to transporting large numbers of troops, and as the war slowly worsened, petrol became more and more scarce, meaning that the roads were often left virtually empty. In fact,
Man, that's saying a lot. As someone who's traveled on train this year alone, like, the fact that the Autobahn at the time was, like, not as efficient as a train, I don't know about, modern trains in Germany and the rest of Europe, but, like, there's a lot of efficiency that is lacking in American Amtrak these days.
Yeah.
So the fact that the Autobahn was not as efficient then wasn't a good sign for old, him. You know who we're talking about. and the whole part about forced labor, like, and it reminds me of another Louis C.K. joke, of like, but maybe every great thing was done because of shitty people. What happened to the pyramids? We just threw human torture and suffering at them until they were finished. That's what that guy did.
But yeah, like look at our railroads.
Yeah, built by
Irish and I think it's Chinese.
Yeah, Chinese. Yeah.
Or Japanese. Chinese.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's tough, man. I mean, especially, but railroads have more strategic significance.
Yeah.
Because they stop more places. This is just a mega highway.
Right.
It'd be like, highway.
I guess the idea of exits and things hadn't been worked out then. And, roadside diners, things like that.
Yeah, and trains were just a more direct route.
Right, exactly.
In fact, this was the only time when bicycles were allowed on the Autobahn. Although they certainly did get some use, although probably not in the way they were designed. With airfields around Germany high on Allied target lists and often attacked from the air, Finnish Autobahn roads were frequently used by the Luftwaffe as makeshift runways, with the planes often kept nearby under camouflage. Though doubt the Allies began picking up on this, and by the end of the war, large stretches of the roads had been badly damaged. Work pretty much ground to a halt in 1943 as the Nazis were ejected from the Soviet Union with their tails firmly between their legs, and Hitler's plans began to implode. As with many aspects of life after World War II, the sections of the Autobahn in West Germany fared much better than those in the East. In the West, most damaged roads were repaired shortly after the end of the war, while in the East, the pace was much slower and sometimes barely moved at all. There was also a noticeable difference in users. In East Germany, the Autobahns were frequently used by the military and state-owned farming or manufacturing vehicles, whereas in the West, they received a much wider use. In the 1950s, the West German government authorized the restart of construction, while in the GDR, things were sporadic, to say the least, and when they did get around to repairing or even adding to the existing system, it was often done with materials greatly inferior to those being used by the West. Even today, there are roads such as the A2, which crosses the old east and west boundary, where there's a noticeable difference in surface quality as you pass between them. While the western section feels relatively smooth, the eastern section is much bumpier, thanks to the old concrete blocks that typically formed the old East German Autobahns.
Wow. It's like going through certain
counties
here in Maryland, like Baltimore.
Yeah.
Yep.
You can definitely tell which county is making some money.
Yeah, or which ones are using that money right, and which roads are better.
Well, because I'll tell you what, man, coming here, whatever that road is, Is that 7 or 695?
695.
Man, that's rough.
It is.
Oh my God, that's rough.
Ugh.
That's rough, especially on a truck. Oh my God.
By the time you get home, you need
I'm
a
just
freaking
like,
brake
I need
job.
an Advil. Like,
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And you need like your tires like balanced.
Balance. I'm like, when did
suspension
we get
balanced.
firebombed? Like,
Yeah.
when did we have an air assault on our freaking roads?
Yeah.
Potholes that are crazy.
Right?
But
Shoot.
On the night of November 1989, as the world watched in raptured awe, large crowds gathered at the Berlin Wall. Nobody's entirely sure how this momentous occasion was going to pan out, but after Public Relations Minister Gunter Schabowski announced on live television that travel restrictions had been lifted, people began passing through the gates in Berlin or simply started smashing down the hated symbol. It was a truly historic moment, and while I doubt too many were thinking about finally linking up the Autobahn system in those early days of freedom
Yeah.
and reunification, it did, of course, mean just that. While the epicenter of all the drama was based in Berlin, in the coming days, checkpoints up and down the dividing line were opened and people began to pour back and forth across the border. In the coming years, Germany instigated its German Unification transport project, which included rail lines, waterways, and of course, new or improved autobahns. There were a total of 7 road projects totaling some 17.3 billion euros, most of which have been completed by the early 2000s.
All right.
Today, the Autobahn system stretches for 13,183 kilometers and reaches to all corners of Germany, though if you look on a map, you'll see that the concentration is higher in some areas than others, with the west the densest and the south and northeast much sparser. This is either down to terrain, with the south being much more mountainous, or high levels of urban population, as is the case for the western region. In the last decade, Germany has undergone a huge widening and rehabilitation program on its Autobahn system, with a very busy A5 in the southwest and the A8 going east-west, two of the most significant upgrades. There are only a few roads now with just 2 lanes going both ways, with most having 3 or 4. It goes without saying that this is one of the finest kept highway systems in the world, with much of the tarmac laid using a freeze-resistant concrete mix which prevents it from cracking, as you often see in other parts of the world. The system comes with 17,000 telephones by the side of the roads that people can call for motor assistance on. Surely, in the age of the iPhone 64 or whatever it is we're on these days, nobody is actually using these roadside telephones anymore, but surprisingly, they're still used on average 150 times every day, a figure down from 710 years ago. It's against the law to stop for any reason on the Autobahns except for emergencies, but luckily for anybody traveling, the Germans do a fine job at maintaining rest stops, service stations, and idyllic picnic spots.
Nice.
To quote one chiseled aviation pilot from the 80s, some people just feel the need for speed. And for those kinds of people, the Autobahn system is probably the best place for them. However, the widely held belief that the whole system is free from speed limits is about as accurate as the dodgy propaganda back in the war. The Autobahn system does have some speed limits, but not everywhere, meaning it's one of the few places in the world without a blanket speed limit. Limits are placed on certain kinds of vehicles and whether they're carrying passengers or not. For example, a bus with passengers standing cannot travel above 60 kilometers or 37 miles per hour, while if everybody is seated, it can travel 80 kilometers per hour or 50 miles per hour. There are also plenty of sections, such as on-ramps, interchanges, specifically dangerous stretches, and parts under repair where speed limits are certainly enforced. So you might be thinking, well, Germany must experience significantly higher levels of traffic accidents, right? Well, of course not. This is Germany. They figured it out. Firstly, German traffic exams are fairly rigorous, meaning that those who emerge from them are typically much better trained drivers than in other countries. With the system also kept in excellent condition, the chances of an accident caused by an issue with the road surface is drastically reduced. And the statistics back this all up. Germany doesn't necessarily experience any more crashes on the Autobahn system than other European countries with speed limits on their rapid transit roads, and the risk of being killed on the Autobahn is about half of that as on American interstates. Whatever the Germans are doing, it's working. But that hasn't stopped a steadily growing movement to apply blanket limits across the country. Numerous votes have been brought forth regarding speed limits in Germany, and so far they've all been rebuffed. The Germans are proud of their Autobahn system and the freedom they have on it, and rightly so. Those from countries living under the yoke of repressive speed limits often simply assume the Germans must be all out flying along at blistering speeds and no doubt causing mayhem on the roads. But the truth couldn't be more different. The Germans are brought up to respect speed, and they're also taught how to handle it. The Autobahn system is a hugely impressive road network that has been evolving since the 1930s, but perhaps equally impressive is that this is an example of how people can be given greater freedom and responsibility to drive how they wish without turning the Autobahns into the German version of wacky races.
All right.
All right, cool.
Very informative. First, let's get this out of the way.
Yep.
2 thumbs up, obviously.
That was awesome.
Now my interest is piqued in not just, Oktoberfest, but Autobahn.
Yeah.
Not at the same time, but the idea that you give people freedom
And they use it right.
And they use it right. That's a good example of that.
Well,
And-
here, everyone's looking for a buck.
Yeah.
Including our local governments that police and monitor areas.
Yeah.
And speed tickets are a huge revenue source.
Yeah, that's why there are ticket quotas for a lot of state troopers. And
Yep.
yeah, that's why it's not a good idea to go too fast on the highway. Here in America, at least.
But, then you have... What would happen if we didn't have any speed limits? I feel like the bad apples would weed themselves out.
Yeah.
Through natural selection. Mm-hmm. And we'd be left with a functioning
society.
Yeah. Yeah. But I'm just saying, look at Germany.
Yeah. The bad apples weeded themselves out. And they're all a smarter society as a result.
Well, they're taught right. They're taught to respect speed.
Yeah.
And machines.
Yeah, we're not really taught that in America. No, it's just how it is.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's not going to change for a long time.
No.
So the key is to get a speedy car over there.
Yeah.
And
that'd be fun.
Yeah, it would be fun.
That'd be fun.
Have you been on the Autobahn before?
Yeah.
Let us know in the
Let
comments.
us know.
And,
is it all that?
Is it all that in a bag of chips?
Yep.
Shout out to the 90s. Thanks for those comments, liking,
Yes.
subscribing, hitting the bell, and sharing with your
Yes,
friends.
definitely, guys.
And until next time, wash your hands, scrub your toes, wipe your ass, blow your nose, embrace the suck.
Unplug and go fast safely.
See y'all next time.